Good. How are you doing?
Good.
Morning. Good morning. So, welcome to the district. We're so excited to have you here. I am Scott Tyler.
Hi.
I am the curriculum instruction for social studies and ELA for secondary. We're so happy to have you here in one of our high school social studies spots. I think we're excited to get to going this year, and I think that we're going to have some great things. So today, what we asked you to come in to talk about is one of these what we call Fundamental 5. I know you just got hired the other day, where you got the book, but you haven't had a chance to go through it. And so when you do, some of the stuff will kind of pop to you. But we wanted to have you in today as we're getting started. If you have any questions as we're going, please don't hesitate to ask. We're just going to go through kind of these steps. So what?
Before we get started,
yes.
Where can I get a key card?
Where can you get a key card? You're going to see our HR director.
Okay.
And they will get you set up. So after we're done here,
I will get in.
Yeah, I apologize for that. Summer hours. After we get done here, I will take you to see our HR director, and we'll get you set up on that.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So what we're going to talk to you about today is what we call Fundamental 5. And basically what Fundamental 5 is, it's instructional practices. What we want to do as a district is set our teachers up for success. Set up our teachers up to be able to use some different strategies in the classroom to basically promote learning, promote student success. And we know that there's lots of different ones out there, and we know as teachers that there's ones that you feel comfortable with, ones that you don't feel comfortable with. So what we came up with was this idea through Fundamental 5, which is this book written by Sean Kane and Mike Laird. Just these practices that we want our teachers to be able to use. As we go through these, you've been teaching, I know, for several years, so they're going to look familiar to you. We just have some different lingo, some different names to it. And so what Fundamental 5 is we've got these 5 critical practices that we find highly effective instruction. So they're framing a lesson, work in the power zone, writing critically, frequent small group purposeful talk, and recognize and reinforce. So we're going to talk our way through some of these today. So the first one we have is we have what's called framing the lesson. You've been in the classroom, you're standing at the door as the students are coming in. What do you always hear?
What are we doing today?
Exactly. What are we doing today? What are we doing today? You come in. That's always the question.
Why
right?
don't you ever give us a day off?
Well, that too. And of course, you want to be able to inform the students what they're doing. The idea is that you hear the question all the time. Well, what are you doing today? What are we doing today? So we're going to give them what you're doing today, and we know that kind of the lingo is objectives, but we call it here framing the lesson. So what framing the lesson is basically you've given your objective, what we call our objective or opening, and you give a close. So it's 2 parts. So the idea is it's going to tell the students what you're doing and what you're expected to kind of learn that day and how you're going to demonstrate what you've learned that day. So the idea is a student can come in and be able to see that on the board and know what is the objective, what is going on for that day. So what is the purpose of this? One, it primes the brain to reception to instruction. The idea is that it gets the students ready to know what they're going to learn. What we call leveling the playing field. Everybody now knows. Everybody knows what the expectations are, what we're doing today. It reduces the stress and anxiety in students. It does, because they know what their expectations are. They know when they walk in the classroom, if your objective and your close is posted, they know what we're going to be talking about today, what activity might we be doing today, what am I going to be doing, and so it does kind of help reduce their stress. Some of those students, and we have those students that are worried about what's going to happen in this next 45 minutes, and it does serve as a touchstone throughout the lesson, because the idea is everything that you're doing in your lesson should relate back to your objective and your close. So I'm going to talk to you real quickly today about how we kind of create these and put them together. So, writing the objective, we call it the we will statement. What will we do as a whole class? When you write your objective for a we will statement, you want to look at the TEKS in the lesson plan that you're using for that day. That's what we're doing, is based off the TEKS. Because everything we do in class is based off our TEKS. The idea is you're going to imagine if when you're writing these, and these are something that you do put in your lesson plan, so you're preparing your we will and I will statements beforehand, is that you're going to imagine what the students are asking. What are we going to learn today? That question, right, when they walk in. What are we doing today? What are we going to learn today? The we will statement is what we are learning about. It's the TEK that we are learning. Alright, we're gonna write down your answer as a we will statement using the TEAC verbiage. Because that's the verbiage that we need to be using. Those are the verbs that they use in the TEACs, those are the verbs that we wanna use in our instruction. We wanna make sure that those rigorous verbs, that we're making sure that we're seeing them and we're transferring them into our instruction. And then we're gonna confirm that your objective is specific to today and accessible in the language and understanding of the students. So we wanna make sure while we have that verbiage there, that the students understand what they're doing. Because we can write the greatest we will statement all the time, but if you have students in there that don't understand it, what's gonna happen? There's gonna be confusion, there's gonna be really disengagement. And so we wanna make sure that it's in their wording, in verbiage that they understand. So, after we have our we will statement, we have our close. The idea is we wanna make sure that students knowing what they're gonna learn, and then our close is how we're going to learn it, or how I'm going to demonstrate how I've learned it. Every day when your students walk out of your classroom, as a teacher, we wanna know, did they learn what I was trying to teach them? And so the close is that written statement that we have to remind ourselves and let the students know, this is how we're going to demonstrate how we're going to learn what we're teaching that day. So the purpose of the close, it prompts one to recognize something that was learned. We're really kind of cueing the student to understand, hey, our close is going to be, this is how we're going to demonstrate what we learned that day. It chunks information in a way that's conductive to making connections and recall. The idea is they should be able to see the close and say, hey, we talked about this. We're able to bring back the lesson that we did. It increases retention because they're focused on what they need to know. They know the end game. The whole idea of our opening and closing, our we will and I will statements, is that there's no surprises to the students. They know that, hey, we know what we're doing from the beginning, we know what the end game is, we know where we need to go. So there's that connection all the way through. And then that kind of goes into that providing a reason for participating in the lesson activities. They know where they're going from here. So when we call it the close, and I kind of mentioned it there, we have what we call the I will statement. So the we will is our opening, the I will, because the idea is what are we going to do as a class, what are we going to learn, and what am I going to do as a student to demonstrate what I've learned. So again, when I write my I will statement, I want to write it in the objective for the day, okay, and I want to provide proof to the students and to the teachers that the objective was met. So how do I know that that objective was met? As a history teacher, you're going to be teaching, I think, a couple units of U.S. history. You might be doing causes of World War II. So our we will statement may have to do with analyzing the causes of World War II. The I will statement is how are you going to, as a teacher, identify it? And it's going to be maybe different for different teachers. The I will statement is different, how you want to make sure they demonstrate it. But we want to make sure that we're demonstrating it in a way that when they walk out, that they're going to understand it. And so you're going to present it in a language of I will, and then using that student-friendly verbiage so they understand it. So what's going to happen is and we also know what happens with students. You'll say something one time, how many students are actually hearing you? You'll say it another time, but now you have it written on the board as well. So different ways.
That should be on the board when the students are coming in,
Yes,
as well as your objective or your we will.
Yes.
Okay.
So these are going to be written on the board. I'm sorry, yes.
Okay.
So they will be written on the board. And so we'll have, instead of just having, I know a lot of schools use just one objective, we're going to have a we will and I will statement. Every day you're going to erase part of it and you have we will and you'll write that in. And same with I will. And so it's written as a show, share, tell, or write. The idea is you're going to write your I will statement and how they're going to show you that they learned. For instance, how do they learn what the effects of World War, the effects of World War II were? That's our we will. What is our I will? Again, it should be quick. It should be something that you're just showing informative assessment type to be able to tell that they learned what they did that day. So when they walk out that door, you can know, okay, they understood this concept, we can move on. Okay, and that kind of goes into that last point there. How do the students demonstrate understanding the concept for that lesson? That's where you're going to decide as a teacher, how do you want them to demonstrate it? It may be listing something, you can summarize, they may verbally, you may have them talk to each other, tell you. And so there's some different ways we can do that. We kind of suggest you always kind of do some different things. Your I will statements are going to be how they show it. Try some different ways to have them do it, to kind of, so it's not always the same thing. So we like to talk about that a lesson frame is like an Oreo cookie. We all love Oreo cookies, right? Yeah. The idea is that each side of the Oreo cookie is your opening and your closing, your I will, and we will and I will statements. And then the middle of it is that yummy feeling, that's your lesson. And when you all put it together, you get a great cookie. So, kind of give you an example here. This was an example that, I was in a classroom last year and I really liked what I saw here, and we look for good ones, we take examples, and we kind of put them together to kind of show some teachers. So this one we can see, this was in a 7th grade math class. So you can see it's a we will learn how to simulate and predict probability, straight out of the text there, that's what they're doing for that day. And then the I will summarize what I learned, making a prediction. So that we know as a student, I'm gonna have to summarize. And now what the teacher did is they made sure that because of time, you never know how much time you have, that summarize may be written. So the teacher may say, okay, you're gonna write this out on a note card or a Post-it note. I know this teacher loved Post-it notes. She'd give each student a Post-it note, they would just write it out, turn it into her as they're walking out the door. Now she just can kind of flip through these Post-it notes to make sure that they understand it. I've seen teachers that have this and they've run out of time, and so instead of writing it, it's an oral thing, and they have students talk to each other, or she'll ask the students as they're leaving, as you leave, make sure you summarize. And so there's different ways that she can do it, but you can see what we're doing here. We will is what they're gonna do as a class, and the I will is what each student's gonna do to demonstrate that they understood. Okay, just remember the biggest thing about our framing the lesson is that it has to have the 2 parts. And then when written correctly, it brings up the rigor, because we're all about trying to bring up our rigor. That's why we want to use those verbs we talked about from the TEKS. That's why we want to be able to use our summarizing or those kind of methods in our I will statements to make sure that we're bringing up that rigor in the classroom. So, any questions about framing the lesson?
On those I will statements there at the end, you mentioned that a teacher adapted and maybe switched from writing to an oral presentation. Does the statement have to include the verb of what it's going to be?
No, and
or
that's
so
why
you can just say that we will remember the top 5, or we will analyze the top 5,
Yeah.
and then you come back and say, okay, we're gonna do this in this format.
you're exactly right. Now we want to make sure those verbs that we're using, think of those verbs, remember to analyze. The difference in our taxonomy, we want to stay away from those remember though. And I like the analyze verb. We saw summarize, analyze, and those are the verbs that we want to use, that same verbiage in that Bloom's taxonomy, that raise in that rigor. But you're right.
Well, sometimes in a history class there are things that
And
you
there's
just
have to
have to
remember,
memorize.
but we're going to use words like hey, summarize. We're going to use, and we can have some words that they can use. But you're exactly right. So it comes with that timing. We want it to be 5 minutes, but we know sometimes lessons go long. We understand that, because we try to plan for a whole time. So you may have to adapt, and that's just part of it. And even if you do have something, that's why you don't want to say we are going to write a summary. Just say we're going to summarize, because then it gives you that leeway of being able to do it either way. So our second part, our first part is framing the lesson. So our second part of and good instructional practices is what we call the power zone. As a teacher, you're the one in power. You're the one that is in the power in the classroom, and so you want to make sure that you control that power. And a lot of that comes from where you put yourself. In the classroom, we want to make sure that you are located where the students know that you're there to help them. So the power zone, what is it? It's teaching or interacting. So there's 2 things, because we know we're not always teaching, but even when we're not teaching, we still need to make sure that we're there in the middle of it, with interacting with one student, a small group of students, or the entire classroom. The idea is it's your location in the classroom is what we call the power zone. We want to be as close to the students as possible. We want to make sure that we're interacting with students as much as possible. We know that there's going to be some times that you're going to be doing some lecturing, that you're going to be up in front of the classroom, and we understand that you're not always going to be there. But as many times as you can, you want to try to find ways to be in the power zone. We have teachers that even when they're lecturing, they found ways with technology to be able to be in the middle with their class and still have a clicker or have some way, and we are here to help them be able to do that if that's what you want to do. So why do we teach in the power zone? We want to make sure that we have classroom management. If I'm standing all the way over there, I don't know what Johnny is doing with his buddies over in the corner, do I? So classroom management, we can address that unwanted behavior immediately. If I'm standing near Johnny in that group and I hear something, I can address it right away. It manages that transitions of making those next steps. We're going to transition. I'm there with you to help those transitions, and increases that proximity with students. Students are going to know, behavior-wise, that I'm not going to do anything if I know the teacher's standing right there. All right, we build relationships, and that's what this is about. We want to build relationships with our students, and the easiest way to do that is that you're there with them as they're working, as you're talking to them. You're able to hear things right away and connect with them. It shows interest. It does. Students recognize when you're around them. Students recognize when you're there to help them and be a part of it, instead of those teachers that may just stand in front of the classroom or may be at their desk. It promotes equitable learning, because you're helping everybody. You're not just helping the one student that sits next to you, or those students that sit in the front row. And you do build a rapport faster. It kind of goes in that, making those connections with students. And it improves instruction. And we talk about easy ways. This is easy. This is just where you are in the classroom. Monitor and adjust your instruction as you're going, because you can tell right away if the students are getting it. You can see through their work if you're around them, or their discussions, are they understanding it? So you can make those quick adjustments if you need to. You're able to answer questions a lot easier. A lot easier to answer the question when you're in the middle of the room around your students than at your desk when little Johnny in the corner yells his question, because what ends up happening then? It distracts the whole class, right? And all of a sudden you now have lost the class for a few minutes. It gives you that immediate feedback as well. Differentiate when needed, because now you're around those groups, so you can differentiate your discussions with them, and you can provide quick clarification.
And what about your students though that have an IEP and need preferential seating? Does that take away the preferential of sitting in the front if you're moving around a lot?
Well, no, because you're still going to be around them. Their IEP means that they have to have, the Power Zone works perfect for that, because it means that you're going to be around them. Because the Power Zone doesn't mean that you're just going to stand back here with that one, you're still going to be around that group. And so they're going to get what they need when you're up here, but they're also going to get what they need when you're roaming around, because you're going to make sure when you know what their IEP is, you know what they need to have, you're going to make sure you're around them. So some pictures here of the Power Zone. As you can see, you just want to be interactive with the classes. What we're looking for is the teacher and being active, interactive, engaged with their students. Even when you're, having to do a presentation, if you're around them, that you're able to then, we talked about classroom management, we talked about that kind of stuff. So, any other questions about the Power Zone? Really, it's just where you're standing, where you're located.
Now, obviously at start class, we're going to be taking attendance and doing things like that. And that's understood.
Yes, that is, and that's something we'll discuss at the end, is kind of how much we're supposed to be seeing these things. Like I said, there's going to be times that we know that you're going to be at the computer taking roll. And so there's going to be times that you're going to have to do some different things. There's going to be times that you may have to stand up and lecture U.S. history. There's going to be some times that you're going to be giving some lectures up here. We understand those things, but when it comes time to have those opportunities to be in the Power Zone, that's what you want to do. Anytime that you can is what we're doing. Again, these instructional practices are things that you may not have to be 100%, but there's things that you want to try to do as much as possible. That's going to improve your instruction, improve classroom management, and overall improve student success, because that's what it's all about. So our third one is recognize and reinforce. The idea of recognize and reinforce is that we want to basically, let's see if this video is actually, I didn't know our technology would actually show this video. Let's see if it works. I'm sorry.
It is important for teachers to understand that they must recognize and reinforce the behaviors that they are wanting to be repeated. All students will benefit from recognition that's specific and personal. The at-risk student will benefit even more. They will begin to make the connection that the more effort they put forth, the more successful they will be academically. When teachers use appropriate recognition and reinforcement, performance can increase from 20 to 48%. I know we would all love to see those types of gains. Our students need them. That could be life-changing for an at-risk student. In order for recognition to be effective, it needs to be personalized and specific. The student needs to know exactly why he's being recognized, so that it can have the effect the teacher desires. Start reinforcing the positive behaviors, the small gains students make, the accomplishments that they are so proud of, and the effect will be powerful. When recognition is ambiguous, a teacher may be reinforcing behavior that they do not want to see repeated. Success lies in the fundamental 5, and reinforcement and recognition is a powerful aspect of that, and it's easy for you to do.
Creative using Powtoon.
So recognize and reinforce, it's what it sounds like. It's recognizing students' efforts, reinforcing them, and just being positive. But it goes a little farther than that. We can talk about positive language, and positive language is something that you always want to have as a teacher. You're going to be positive, but recognize and reinforce takes it to another level. What recognize and reinforce is it's a personal connection. So number one, when we talk about personal connection, we want to talk about by name. Instead of just saying, you all did a good job today. That's positive, language. We want to make sure it's directed to one student. Ms. Tyler, you did a great job today on your test. We want to make sure that they know what they did a good job on, whatever the reinforcement is or the recognition is. And so I know recognition and reinforcement sounds very similar, but there's a little bit of a difference in them. But when we come in and look for it, we're just looking for some kind of that positivity that's directed straight to the student, so they know when they're saying I did something well, or I did positive in this area. So recognition is the personal and specific acknowledgement of academic growth and success. So the idea with recognition is we're recognizing that the student is showing growth in their academic performance. So that's when we talk about Johnny, you did a great job yesterday on your test. You grew 20 points. And you may not say that to the whole class, but you're going to catch Johnny coming in, and you may tell him. But you got to be specific in what you're trying to recognize them in doing, so they know, hey, I did great on this, and they're able to then it helps them, it encourages them, and so recognition is with academic growth. Reinforcement is now you're reinforcing the personal and specific acknowledgement of their work and effort. So the idea is a little different. Academic, recognition is you're recognizing that they did something. Reinforce is that they're working towards it. The idea is that they're working towards achieving that growth or success. So it could be, hey, you did, on that test yesterday, I saw how you really, did a great job this time showing your work. It's a little thing, but it's an extra step for them to think. All of a sudden, little Johnny's going to think, hey, she recognized what I did today. I'm going to keep doing that. And so that's what we're trying to do through recognize and reinforce.
So for instance, Scott, you did a great job implementing that video that added a little something to break up your presentation and helped us stay on track.
That would be perfect. Exactly. Now you're reinforcing what I did do this. So what is our purpose? We kind of talked about this a little bit, but our purpose in recognize and reinforce is it's a good coaching model. In a way of we're modeling positive behavior, we're modeling positive words. I've seen teachers, I've walked into classrooms where all of a sudden you're hearing the students use those same words, and because they're getting it from the teacher. And so it's really good to model those words. It's good to model that type of positive attitude in the classroom. Cornerstone of improvement, that's how you get kids to grow, is you make those connections. And you kind of see how some of these go together. We talk about the power zone thing, and when you're in the power zone and you're doing recognize and reinforce, those combine. And so we can see that, and it shows the improvement that the students have when you're able to reinforce them.
You can't reinforce if you're not actually seeing what they're doing.
Exactly. You're not going to be able to, exactly, and that's what this is. This is all just good instruction. And we just have it in these little lingos, and these are our non-negotiables, as we talked about. And so, also, it's going to increase your student performance, because when you're positive with your students, they're going to want to do better. They're going to want to grow. Just again, the key is that we're making sure that positivity is being specific, so the students know specifically what they're doing well, so they continue to grow there. So, and that's where we're kind of getting. So what is the difference between positive talk and recognize and reinforce? And, and because there is a big difference, and that's what we're looking for, because we want to make sure that we're we're not just using positive talk, which you need in classroom, but we're taking it to that next step. So one, we just talked about, it gets in the power zone. You know, being in the power zone helps with that recognize and reinforce, because now you can be direct to that one student that you're working with there about what's going on. Okay? You can address specifics instead of generalities. That's what we talked about. You want to be specific in that positive talk. The more specific you are, it's going to become recognize and reinforce. So, when I engage in positive talk, good job. Okay, but finish the comment by pointing out what caught your eye, what was good about it. Call the student by name. One of the biggest things that, you know, we want as students, you know, we want to have that connection to them, so we're going to call them by name. Miss Tyler, you did a wonderful job with that lesson yesterday, implementing how, you know, World War II, the outcomes of it. Sorry, I'm just gonna, but you can see that we want to try to include as much information as we can to reinforce that. And with students, that's going to just drive them to want to continue with that behavior. So here's a couple of examples. You know, we have Justin hasn't turned in a single homework assignment for the last 3 weeks, but today he remembered to bring his homework and turned it in. A lot of times,
So much for in your homework. Can't
great.
wait to see how you did. Great.
Great, yes. And a lot of times though, we realize that we think about Justin, we're like, oh, wonderful that you brought your homework in, you know, but we have to make sure that we give him that positive reinforcement. Marisol has never scored higher than a 74 on a test. Today she scored an 83.
Great job. That studying must be is really paying off. You know, you improved almost 10 points. Let's keep it up.
Wonderful, yes. Lamar scored at the commended performance level on the state exam.
Woohoo.
Woohoo. And so when we see Lamar come in, we're
Yeah.
that's an amazing job what you did. You've worked so hard this year, and look at what you were able to do because of it. Brittany made the honor roll for the first time. You know, that's going to be a huge thing for Brittany. So we want to make sure it's a celebration too. What reinforcement and recognition and reinforcement does for us is it lets us celebrate our students, and that grows our culture in our school. And so we want to celebrate the successes. We try to celebrate everything we can. I know we like to celebrate on the football field, on the basketball court, but we got to make sure we're celebrating the classroom as well. And so anytime that you get a chance to celebrate, to recognize what these students are doing, even if it's Justin hasn't turned in a single homework assignment in 3 weeks, compared to Lamar scoring commended on his test, every student's going to be different. We got to make sure we find what in that student we can do. Because if we talk to Justin about that, then all of a sudden it may be saying, hey, if I do this more, I'm going to get that recognition. Don't we love that? Don't we love when people are positive to us? So, and that kind of goes in here. Make a big thing, big deal, small things. Marisol getting an 83 on her test, Justin just turning an assignment. Those are big deals. An 83, maybe not where she wants to be at the end, but she showed growth. We want to recognize that growth. Okay? We start reinforcing the work it takes to be successful. Okay? Personalization, we talked about that. Now that's what we always want. When we're doing walkthroughs, if we hear the reinforcement, we might, you know, and we don't hear the name, we're going to let you know, hey, make sure you're telling them by name. Just address them by name. Because that makes that connection because they hear their name. You know, when they hear Marisol, they're focused now. They know that you're talking straight to them. And then the benefits of this is recognition provides students with the motivation to continue pursuing their academic success. The more that we can promote them, motivate them, celebrate what they're doing, the more they're wanting to do it and the more successful they're going to be. And then reinforcing the work builds habits, which allows for improvement in student performance. So the more we can reinforce that growth, that academic growth that they're trying to do, then they're going to continue on to build. You know, Justin hasn't turned an assignment in 3 weeks, but if I'm reinforcing that work habits that he did it that one time, should he have been doing it for the whole time? Yes. But hey, we're making baby steps with that kind of student. You turned it in. Great job, turn it in. You worked really hard on this. And then, you know, he's going to recognize that reinforcement that you're giving him and want to build off of that. So, you know, when we look at it, I love this quote when it talks about compliments and encouragement go a long way towards making children feel good. Descriptive praise, which is what we talk about with reinforcement, where you tell the child exactly what it is that you like, works best of all. And so that's where this practice comes from, is we want to make sure that we're descriptive in what we're praising them for, being direct to the student, and being personal with it. And I know for some students, or for some, especially once you get to the high school level, especially once you get, there's some students that you're thinking, oh, high school students, they don't need it. They do. They need it as much as our elementary students do. And so we need to make sure that even if, we're thinking high school students, it's important that they get that recognition, that they want that, they want to feed off of that. Because there's a lot of kids that they don't get that anywhere else. And so we need to make sure that when they walk into your classroom, that they're getting that. And if we can accomplish it in their whole schedule, then they're all day long. It's that positive attitude that they're gonna go home with, they're gonna come back with, they're gonna wanna come back because of that. So the more we can practice this, the more that we can hopefully build that culture that we want in our district. All right, any questions about recognition and reinforcement? Just be positive. So our fourth one is what we call frequent small group purposeful talk. The idea is that students need to be talking with each other. You've been, you've taught, you've been in classrooms, you've done, when a teacher talks for 30, 40 minutes, what do the students do?
They get off task.
They get off task. They zone out. We understand that it's different today than it was, 20 years ago. It's a different environment. And so we need to make sure that we have student engagement. One way we can have student engagement is what we call our purposeful talk. So what our purposeful talk is, out here, the idea is that we can't just lecture to them and expect them to be educated. It doesn't work that way anymore. You're gonna sit up in front and talk about, the Gilded Age for 45 minutes. There's gonna be a lot of blank stares by the end of it because it has lost them. And so we need to make sure that we're changing our some of our strategies. So frequent small group purposeful talk. Okay, frequent. Between 10 to 15 minutes of your teaching talk, you should have some kind of purposeful talk for them. The idea is it's breaking up into segments. Really, I believe no more than 10 minutes. If you're talking 10 minutes, you need to find a breaking point, even a lot of times less than that. Find a point, and if you're lecturing in your way, to get them to be able to talk about it. Okay, small group should be 2 to 4 students. Okay, we like 2 to 3 if be 2, if there's a third one to get in, because the idea is it gives everyone a chance to talk. You get a big group talking, 1, 2 people are going to talk, the others aren't. We want engagement. And engagement means that everyone is listening and talking. And so we want to make sure that in our small groups, we have 2 to 4 students are doing it, so they're all engaged, they're all talking, and you're in the power zone, so guess what? You're able to hear them all now. Okay, and it needs to be purposeful. There's that word, we go, well, what does purposeful mean? It needs to increase understanding. Purposeful talk isn't just talk about, a lower level. Again, we talk about Bloom's taxonomy. You want to make sure you look at your verbiage in Bloom's taxonomy, and those are the types of questions that you need to be asking them to talk about, so they're increasing their understanding. So we have that idea of frequent, small group, and purposeful talk all comes together to increase student learning, student understanding. Okay, and what is our purpose there is to enhance student engagement and to advance our lesson. So why? Because of our attention spans. We talked about it. Teens, their attention span is 8 to 10 minutes, and then you've lost them. And once you've lost them, it takes a lot to get them back. And so we got to make sure that we are finding ways to keep them engaged. And one of the easiest ways is by stopping and having them talk. 12 years and under, you can see that attention span even goes even lower. And so the problem is typical adults, ours is 10 to 15 minutes, so we're thinking we're okay. We got to remember our audience. So the power of it. So one, it provides students with a chance to process and catch up. Because it lets them stop, think about what you've talked about, process it, gives them a little bit of time, and then allows them then to respond to it. It resets their attention span, because then they're able to then refocus, they're able to do something else, come back. It allows you as a teacher to maintain higher levels of engagement through your entire lesson. I know there's going to be times, especially in history classes, that you are going to be giving a lecture for a while, and so one of the things that we have to make sure is that entire lesson, though, they're having that understanding. And so you have to give them moments to stop,
Mhm.
to reflect what they're doing, to then compromise, to have that, and then be able to move on. So you know that there's an understanding. Because if you go through 45 minutes of talking, and then you realize that they didn't understand what you talked about for the first 10 minutes, then you've lost it. And then you almost have to go back and reteach and go backwards. And we don't want to go backwards, we want to keep moving forwards. Okay? I think we have a lot of teachers that feel like when they first try it, it does feel choppy. But the more frequent you do, the more they're used to it. We have teachers that call it their elbow partner. Talk to your elbow partner now.
So should it always be the same person, or can you do like the old clock partners thing where they
That-
do it
and that's a
several
great-
different ones?
And that's something as a teacher,
Yeah.
the more you can implement something like that, we have teachers that just do elbow partner because it's easier for them, they do talk, but it's a great idea if you're able to then have them talk to different people, they're getting new ideas every time. And so you just wanna make sure that it's kind of a quick thing that they're not having to get up and you've got student here and student back there, coming together. You wanna find ways to make it kind of a quick little thing, to be able to do. Purposeful talk is sometimes no more than 30 seconds to a minute. The idea is that it's just a quick little discussion they're having to be able to kind of have them show engagement. So, how do you do this? Okay, so the idea is if you're having trouble with the stop and talk rhythm, one idea that we've given teachers, and you're gonna get one in your welcome bag, is you're gonna have a little timer. We have also teachers that put timers up on their boards, that they just know that they set it for 10 minutes, or whatever it is. Once it goes off, you're gonna finish your stop thought, and you're gonna have your students then, you ask them a question. What it comes down to is it comes down to planning questions, knowing what you wanna ask, okay? So that's if you're kind of struggling with it. We've had teachers that I think it's kind of, some teachers that they give the egg timer to a student. You have that student that you may find out that they need to have something, they need to focus on something. We call it, maybe you're a more behavioral challenge student. You give them the timer, you give them a task. Then all of a sudden, I walked in the classroom and they had the timer. They were focused on what the teacher was saying because they wanted to make sure that they knew when to, because the teacher said, hey, when I get to this point, I want you to stop. Even if it's not on the clock. They're actually engaged now because they're focused, they have a job. And so you get the kids to be focused. I have a very important job for you, I want you to help me teach the class today. All of a sudden, you've got them engaged. And so those are just a little tips if you're struggling with it. To me, the talk is a couple things it also does. When you ask questions to the whole group, what normally happens?
Your one kid answers all the time.
Exactly.
And everyone else hides in the back.
Exactly. So as a teacher, I ask a question, I get an answer. Okay, great, we have an answer, the class knows it. Does the class? No, the class doesn't know it. The class, all other 15 of them out of 16, you don't know as a teacher if they know it, they heard the answer, but do they understand why that's the answer? So what Purposeful Talk allows you to do is it allows you to take those questions, and that's what I talk to teachers about. Those questions you're gonna ask to the whole class, ask them as Purposeful Talk questions. And talk to your neighbor, or talk to your elbow partner, or have a way of doing that, where now they're talking to each other, and so they're all answering that question. And in the Power Zone, you're hearing all their answers, so you can then interject if you want to. You can talk to them if you want. The next step is when you come back as a class, you can say, okay, you two, what was your answer? And if you heard a good answer, you can kind of know too who to ask to get that feedback from, or then you can actually monitor and clarify and make adjustments if you've heard some answers that are wrong. And then the next step, we can take it to another level as you're getting used to doing this, and we can say the group over here of the two of them, I want you to tell me what your partner said. So now we're making sure that we're listening, and we're seeing if we can summarize what somebody else says, which is a great higher level skill to have. So Purposeful Talk works for multiple reasons and able to get more out of students. So, the power of it, and that's what we kind of just talked about. We build that understanding and make those connections. Use vocabulary and context. We want to use our vocabulary, and so this is a great way for students to use vocabulary. You can tell students, Purposeful Talk, and I want you to use one of our words, our word wall words, or one of those words that we have. Increases our retention. Manage instructional rigor. That's what we talked about. You can manage that rigor of how they're doing through your questioning and what you're looking for. Provides a process for differentiation, because they might all be at different levels, and then you're able to be able to facilitate that.
Mhm.
And then you are able to give that immediate feedback.
Mhm.
So, it comes with preparation. It does. We have, students' responses require you to have quality preparation time. As you're building your lessons, what questions do I want to ask? Where can I make these breaks? Where can I find time to stop? You can't just go and just say, okay, I'm going to stop in the middle of something just because I need to make sure they talk. It's okay to do that because we need to make sure that they stay focused, but it's going to be more fluid. It's going to be more effective when you plan. When you're able to plan your lesson out, plan what questions you want to ask, plan where you want to stop, how much time you're going to give them, then it's going to go a lot more smooth for you as a teacher. They're going to understand the process, and after a few times, they're going to get it and they're going to roll with it. And I'll be honest, it makes teaching fun when you're able to hear a whole class have a discussion over something and everybody has some input into it. Not just that one student who answers every single question and the rest of them are just like, and they all know too. What do they know? They know that they're going to answer that question, so nobody else is going to have to answer. So it gives them that opportunity, but it comes in our planning. So that, we talk about the C questions that we require: your planning, your execution, your reflection. We have to have that advanced preparation. Our questions that teachers develop on the fly are usually closed questions. If I'm thinking of, they might be a low rigor, they might be both. Just to be honest, we walk into classrooms and I think teachers feel like they have to stop and do that. So what do we hear? We know when the questions aren't planned. We know when also they stop and ask, just a simple question to get the kids talking because somebody's in the room and they feel like they need to do this. Remember, all these strategies are used to help students grow. It's not a system of I have to do it just because I'm supposed to, but there needs to be that reason and there needs to be that understanding behind it. So any questions on our purposeful talk? To me, it's your most powerful tool that you're going to have to make sure that you keep students
Can we
engaged.
get a list of some example C questions?
Yes, we will. Yeah, I will. When we're planning and when we sit down and plan, we'll have we'll give you a list of those questions, and then we'll kind of talk about what questions you should be asking as you're going through it. So our last one is what we call critical writing. This is the last step of those tools that we can use to help students' engagement, help students grow, help students succeed. So critical writing, we really need to make sure that our students are writing as much as possible. Why? What is critical writing? It has to be purposeful and intentional. It can't just be writing to write. It needs to have a focus, and you can tie this in. We talk about tying all these things in together. A lot of times your critical writing can be tied in to your I will statements. We talk about that writing component. If they can write a summary, now we're critically writing as well. Okay, shouldn't be more 5 to 10 minutes. It should be something that they're just writing about what they've done. It should be about the lesson that you've done. But the idea is writing is a higher level rigor because then they're able to put it in their own words, and if they're able to do that, then they that there's understanding. Okay, it solidifies that learning because if you're if you're lecturing, you're purposeful talking, but at the end, if they can put it into words, then that's demonstrated that understanding of their learning. Okay, content writing based on objectives. In our TEKS we have writing as objectives. It increases our rigor, and then it also increases our relevance because we can tie it back into what they're doing, tie it back into their own. A lot of times when they write, they're going to be personal in their writing, and so it ties it back into both the rigor and the relevance. So, what can writing critically actually mean? It means a lot of different things. I know as a history teacher, it doesn't mean that they have to write a 5 paragraph essay. What it means is that it can be a simple list that they write down. Okay, a short comparison paragraph, and especially in history, as you're talking about your eras, you're going to be able to have them write about different eras and compare one of the eras. Just a quick summary of what you did that day. We looked at that objective that we saw at the beginning here, and that was what was the summary? Now that teacher had them write it. Now there you go. You've done your critical writing as well. It could be a mind map, purposeful note taking, Cornell notes, those kind of things. That is writing. Note taking, as long as it's not just I'm writing down what the teacher's saying, but I'm doing actual truly note taking where I'm putting my own thoughts into it. okay, and a written exit ticket, that close, you know, or it could be that formal essay. So writing quickly, why we talk about it, the more writing we're doing, the more we're remembering, the more our reading improves, the better understanding we have, and then that big one, students own their own learning. And so it's a cycle, you know, and critical writing is a big part of that cycle, because the more they can write, the more that their understanding is going to be. Okay, so some examples, just to kind of get you some understanding of some examples. The 20-word summary, because oh boy, you have students use it. This is a fun one. Exactly 20 words, students summarize what they learned in that class period. 20 words isn't very much. You know, when I was in the classroom, I used to call it the tweet of the day. Give me a tweet of what we did today. Summarize what you've learned today. Summarizing tells you automatically, did the student understand what we did today? All right? Don't break the bank. You're given a dollar amount and asked to summarize the content without breaking the bank. So the idea, again, little fun ways to kind of incorporate writing. So each word you write will cost you 10 cents. You must spend between $2.70 and $3. Fun little activity for them. They kind of get into it. And you're gonna think in high school, they do. I've watched this happen where these high school kids, they're comparing how close they can get. Especially your upper level kids, they want to see, can I get to $3, you know, without, you know, and challenging them. Then the other thing you do when they're done, trade papers to the classmate, they total up their words. All right, the minute paper, just a short written response to 1 or 2 questions provided by the teacher regarding their learning. So make sure that, you know, it's a quick response. Okay, muddiest point, students write down the most confusing or least clear points of what they've heard. So as a teacher now, I know what do they understand, what do they not understand. So you're able to get that immediate feedback. Okay, pros and cons. You know, you can search at least 2 sides of the issue. This is great for history. You know, when you give them one of those kind of topics that you can talk about Vietnam War, and they can say what were the pros, what were the cons. That's writing, because they're putting that down in a list. Okay, and then reflective journaling. And in your packet you have this screen, this shot that gives you some of these reflective questions that you can ask to be able to have them write about. Okay, so that's our 5 big ones. What we're going to talk about here is kind of how we put them into action and what we're looking for when we come. One last point on the writing that, you know, as a U.S. history teacher, you're going to see our STAR test, our EOC test, starting next year. There's going to be writing in it. So we have to write more in our classrooms. The students are going to have to write those kind of short responses. So we got to make sure we're incorporating them as much as possible. So it's a good way to be able to do that. So what we do is, as administrators, your administrators on campus, us as the curriculum staff, our superintendent, a couple of our assistant superintendents, they do what we have power walks. So you're going to have people in your room a lot. And you will get used to it. You won't even notice that they're there. But power walks are really, we're there for about 2 or 3 minutes, just observing in that small window what you're doing. And we're looking for these 5 things, plus we're looking at just kind of your lesson and where it's at, and we're documenting those things. Power walks are not a gotcha system. It has nothing to do with your T-tests. It has nothing to do with your evaluation. What the power walks are is for us to help teachers. We're able to compile the data, and then what's going to happen is after every 15 power walks that you have, your principal is going to have a meeting with you and just go over that data and talk about it. And it's just a way to help you as a teacher grow. We're here to help teachers grow. That's what we want. We want teachers to grow. So it's not a gotcha system. It's not anything. So when they come in, don't feel like, you know, you're under the microscope. You keep teaching, because that's what we want to see. I enjoy walking in and watching teachers teach. And so that's what these power walks do. So just to give you a little idea here, this is what our form looks like. When we walk in, just to let you know, this is what our form looks like. What we're looking for is your location. You know, you can see the power zone. Well, we have the lecture position, which is when you're up in front of the class. Your instructional work area is when you're at your desk. Okay, there are going to be times, we understand there's going to be, if you have somebody that comes in and does a power walk in the first 2 minutes, they're going to come see you at your desk. That's going to be understandable. I personally, and many administrators are going to wait after 3 or 4 minutes for you to get started because they know there's not a whole lot going on in that first few minutes. We're looking for people engagement, student engagement. There's our lesson framing. We're just coming in. We're going to see, is your objective posted? Is it your close posted? Is it aligned? Is your activity aligned with what you're doing? What we are doing is we're looking for these high yield strategies. And so some of these we didn't talk about, but there's your critical writing activities. There's your summarization in writing. So you're going to get writing to that. That's going to go to critical writing as well. So is the identifying similarities and differences. We have our small group, so we're looking for that. And then we have our recognize and reinforce. So those are the main ones we're doing. As we've gone on here, the last couple of years, we've added little things here and there. You know, all we do have is there an exit ticket being used. We have some other stuff that's not on this form that we're going to show you when we get started, so you know what we're looking for. We want you to know, because it's not a gotcha system. It is a how can we help you grow. So with that said, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I'm not always going to be doing these things. We understand that. And so what we did is, what this is kind of as we compile all your walkthroughs, because it's a 2 to 3 minute little glimpse of what you're doing, right? It's not what you're doing overall. But the more people that are going to be in your room, the more that we're going to compile the whole picture. So after every 15 or so, what we're looking for is we want you to be in the power zone about 60-70% of the time that we've done walkthroughs. That's what we're looking for. The idea is that we know you're not going to be in the power zone all the time, but we're hoping once 15-20 people have observers have come in, that 60% of the time you're in the power zone. We want your lesson framing, honestly, 85 to 95%. Right, in the morning, what are you going to do? You come in, or when you leave in the evening, write out your stuff. That should be there most of the time. Recognize and reinforce, honestly, it's going to be a little lower. It's about 20 to 40% because we're only in there for a short amount of time. But it is a great time to think about, hey, they're here. What can I do to encourage it? Now, we are going to be, a lot of us, when we look at that, we need to make sure it's specific by name and it's truly that recognizing and reinforcing what we talk about. You're giving them something telling them what they did specifically. You know, honestly, if you say, hey, that was a great job today, then we have something that clicks that just says, you know, positive language. But we need to make sure that it follows those guidelines. Small group, 20 to 30%. We know that when we're in there, it may not be that time that you have it. We're just hoping that's how much we see it at the very least. And then our writing, 15 to 25% of the time. I mean, 1 out of every 4 observers when they come in should have seen that you were doing some kind of writing. Hopefully that means that's when they caught you. Because we know, again, it's not a system that's in place to evaluate you, it's a system to help you grow. So those are the things that we're looking for. So any questions on our walkthrough systems, our forms?
So will be walkthroughs happening every day?
It should be you're gonna have walkthroughs every day. We are required to have 25 of these a week. You'll have your administrators, your principal and assistant principal will just be for your campus. They have to have 25. Think about how many, we want to hit, we don't want to hit 2 teachers a week as far as each person goes. And so you'll see them in your rooms. The curriculum staff, us that are with secondary, we're only, we'll be at junior high school. So you'll be seeing us, usually I come once every couple weeks. And then you're gonna be having other administrators as well. So most likely you will have probably 3 to 4 people in your room every week. And again, they're only in there for a short time. And when you're doing those other things, when you're in the power zone, when you're having all that stuff, you may not even realize they were there. And even the students are used to it. You're gonna think, oh, the students are, no, they don't even skip a beat. This is something, we've done this for a couple of years. We've done it, starting in kindergarten or pre-K, so they're used to it. And so it's just another kind of thing that we're doing, again, to help you grow. So that's our Fundamental 5. That is, we're excited. We feel like it's going to help us grow. the more teachers are doing this, the more students are growing. We do this in every classroom. We're going to see great growth going on. So, any questions about our Fundamental 5?
Oh, I think we're good. I think that answers it. I will read the book, of course.
Yes, and as we get started in the first week.
So when we go to our planning meetings, that'll be included in all those.
Exactly. When we go through our planning meetings, we're going to be talking about those purposeful talks, and then what we're doing them and the purpose for. We're going to be talking about writing our framing, because your framing will be part of your planning. You're going to write what those I will and we will statements are going to be, and we've got some in your resources that we have some that kind of give you some statements to use. We talked about having those. We talked about those for purposeful talk as well. We have them for I will, we will statements. We have a chart for Power Zone. We have all that stuff that you'll be able to go back, look, and be able to use. So, well, thank you. We're excited to have you in our district.